morning, good evening, everyone. How is everyone? Getting set up right now.
Doing okay. I'm doing okay.
My boy has a voice.
I'm not dying, which is fantastic.
You good to speak for a moment. You missed out on what the last podcast, the review episode, and everything, but you're back.
I am back. It's also weird because I'm not used to doing this on Twitter,
Right.
and the fact is my microphone's not in my face. So,
Good morning.
Yo, what's up, guys?
you know,
Well,
Good morning. Good morning.
good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we
I
can. It's
can.
like a slight echo on my end. Can you guys hear the
Yeah,
echo?
I'm getting an echo too. I've got headphones on, so it's not a feedback issue.
Right, right. Same. I have headphones on as well, and I'm like, okay.
I was muted, so it couldn't be me.
I'm hoping it's not me. I'm going to mute my mic and then see if that works, and then you can hear it.
Okay. Let me see. Nope, I don't hear echo.
What's up? What's up, Simon? Though, how you doing,
Hi,
man?
Simon.
I'm good, thank you. Hello, the echo's gone away.
It is. So it was you, Mark. Okay, Mark.
Did you all have late nights last night?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Thank you for that, by the way.
It was definitely on the Cosmic Furious binge watch.
Absolutely. Your midnight was 8 p.m. My time, so I was kind of following everyone's comments on Twitter as they were watching it, which was really cool, and it wasn't too late for me. So I just imagined everyone sort of struggling to keep their eyes open at 3 in the morning as they were coming to an end.
Yeah. No, literally at the end, I was like, I need to sleep. I had worked all day, and then I went to go see Lady Gaga, and then
Oh, wow.
at the end came to watch Cosmic Fury by myself, and I was like, I'm exhausted.
Facts.
How was it after Lady Gaga? That would have been an interesting little dessert to main course.
So it was an incredible show, and I was a little tipsy off of a couple Long Islands. So it was a fun night to finish with Cosmic Fury.
I'm mad you went to go see Lady Gaga. Was it House of Blues or?
No, she has a residency here in Vegas at Park MGM.
Oh, lucky you, lucky you.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like, again, I was a little drunk, so I cried a little, and then cried again during Cosmic Fury.
That's one thing. That's one question I have for you, Simon. How do you feel about having people emotional breakdowns due to this being the last season of Power Rangers?
I'm not so pleased that they're having emotional breakdowns because it's the last season, but if they're having emotional breakdowns because what they're watching is really sad or moving, then that's exactly what I'm hoping will happen. So it's meant to be sad at times and moving at times, but I think the fact that it could well be the last season of the show does add a certain something to the experience of watching it. And we didn't know when we were writing it that would be the case. We didn't find out until May this year when the announcement was made that Power Rangers was leaving New Zealand, that it was all over. I mean, Power Rangers leaving New Zealand is kind of a corporate euphemism for we've got no plans to continue with the show, and it's too expensive to keep paying for everything to be stored in warehouses in New Zealand, rather than we're going to move production somewhere else.
Right.
So it was very clear at that point. We knew that the Entwistle show was somewhere in development, but it's still at very early stages as far as I know, and they're nowhere near casting. I mean, one draft script might have shown up somewhere. But,
yeah, I think only the first draft was created, and then they're crafting from that, which is the show now. Because I do know for a fact the film isn't on.
That's right. And so realistically, looking at how long these things take, now the writer's strike is over, they'll be back into development. I don't think they'll have finished writing a series until, months into next year, because these things take a lot of time.
Correct.
And the earliest they could possibly go into production would be the end of next year, I would say, given design, build, casting, all the things they need to do for a show like this. So I would say mid to late 2025 would be earliest to expect the next version of the show. And that's assuming that Hasbro have the kind of will and the commercial desire to spend the huge amount of money it's going to cost to make that show.
Yeah. I do know they should split the cost with Netflix. Is seeing the home. That's their home brand now. So hopefully they split it 50-50 and not pretty fully rely on investors, because I don't think they have investors at this point that will even fully commit to Power Rangers, which is sad.
It is really sad. And also, you know, Power Rangers suddenly stopped being a priority at the beginning of this year,
Right.
with the new CEO is kind of redefining what the company was going to focus on, and you know, it's very hard to get enthusiasm, I think, within a big corporation for something that requires a big outlay of money when it's very low on your list of corporate priorities. So it's all those kind of political, you know, political corporate issues that have been what have put the stop to Power Rangers this year.
Yeah, and a little bit about the production side for the action figures. I know that's been a big thing in the fandom about getting Cosmic Fury figures. Now, we do know back a year ago you guys were developing the suits. You designed them in a way in order to articulate for the production of these figures.
That's correct. Back then, there was a definite plan to make the figures. In fact, the whole reason the suits were changed was because of the toy production, because obviously toy sales is a big part of Power Rangers revenue. Right. I don't know what the plan is now with toys, whether there will or there won't be Cosmic Fury figures. That's in the hands of Hasbro. But there was a mass series of layoffs early this year.
Right.
Basically, nearly all the people within Hasbro who worked on Power Rangers were laid off. So that's one of the reasons why the promotion and marketing has been so thin for Cosmic Fury, because the entire team were pretty much gone. And the same goes with the brand team. And yeah, basically it's tumbleweeds as far as focus on Power Rangers is concerned.
Yeah. That's the sad part about it. I think last time we spoke, I think only about 5% of the entire team for production and creatives on Power Rangers is still there. And that still has went radio silent as of today. So.
Yeah. That's right. But despite all that, you know, in terms of writing and making the show, it was a lot of fun. And, you know, we were very enthusiastic about it and loved making it. We were just sad that it was only 10 episodes, because we had to compress the stories from 20 into 10, which I think affects the pacing within Cosmic Fury. It does feel a bit rushed, and some of the story elements feel a bit once over lightly. We couldn't go into the depth that we would have liked to and that we did in the original 20 episode season. And also, just from a shooting point of view, it feels like it's over before you've even started. I mean, we were filming, I think, maybe 2 months, slightly more than 2 months, and then it was all over. Whereas normally we would start in October and we'd carry on through until April, May the following year on a 44 episode season. So it was all short and truncated. But despite that, you know, everyone gave it 110%, and I think everyone knew, because it was only 10 episodes and because of the messages we'd been getting, that this was likely to be the last hurrah. And that made it, that gave everyone an even stronger sense of, well, let's show them that we can be fantastic and go out on a high note rather than just fade away.
Yeah, that's interesting, because, again, I was in the dark. I was never made, clear if it was originally created for 20 plus episodes and you guys had to condense it down to 10 due to Netflix rule of only having 10 episodes. That's been ordered.
It wasn't Netflix. That wasn't the reason for it. It was always going to be on Netflix, and Netflix were okay, happy with the 20 episodes. It was a board decision within Hasbro not to spend the money on the 20 episode season, and it became a Netflix original, which meant that Netflix would pay for the whole thing, but they would only do that for 10 episodes rather than the 20. So at the end of 2021. Just before Christmas, when the green light failed, we thought, oh no, it's all over, it's not going to happen. And then after the holiday break in January of 2022, we found out that Netflix had stepped in and that they would fund a 10-episode season, but that's all there would be. And also Once and Always. That was when Once and Always happened, because that had been sold to Netflix as part of the package.
So that could have potentially taken up a spot. It would have been 9 episodes. So how did you guys finesse that being its own special?
It was always going to be its own standalone special. Hasbro wanted it to be different to the kids series. They wanted something that was a bit older skewed, that was made with the adult fans and lapsed fans of the show in mind. That was what was behind Once and Always. The tricky thing was, though, that the brief changed all the time that we were getting from Hasbro. It was originally meant to be a family show with lots of humor and quite comedic, and that was written, and that's where monster characters like Retrono came from with his nostalgia bombs, which would send everyone back to the 90s. And then they changed their mind and they wanted something much grittier and more adult skewed. So we completely went back to the drawing board and wrote a different story. And then gradually, one by one, we found that various legacy Ranger actors were not available or not interested. And every time another actor fell over, we'd have to rewrite again. And then Hasbro decided that it was all looking too dark and they wanted something that would work for families to view, parents watching with kids. So again, we had to go back to the drawing board. We kept the basic story, but we changed the tone of it a bit to lighten things up. So, when you're making something for a client, you do what the client asks you to do because they're the person paying for it. But, it kept changing shape and changing form Once and Always, right through into the edit. Because I think no one was really sure what they wanted and they were quite nervous about it. And remembering that for Hasbro, MMPR is the goose that lays the golden eggs because of the sheer numbers of people who used to watch MMPR back in the day. Like most people who aren't fans of the show, you ask them what Power Rangers is and their mind will automatically go to MMPR and those characters because that's when it was a global phenomenon.
Right. That seems to be an issue with Power Rangers. They always try to catch the lightning in the bottle that struck back in the 90s that doesn't translate into today's world.
It never ever will, and that's the problem is that in the 90s it was new and there was nothing like it, and it hit the zeitgeist, and you can only ever be new once with a property like Power Rangers. So rather trying to recreate whatever the formula was back then, I think it's better to just keep evolving and developing and keeping the show you're making modern rather than trying to tick all the check boxes that were relevant back in 1993, but the world has moved on since then, and a show that was made in 1993 or a show that is without irony trying to replicate something from 1993 is not going to resonate, I don't think, with the modern audience. And that's been one of the problems with Power Rangers over the last few years. It's tried too hard to be something from the past rather than moving forward into the future.
Right. Hopefully we get that with this reboot.
I hope so.
The second script.
I really hope it happens, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with it. And I expect it will be quite different from any sort of Power Rangers that people know. I imagine that it will be standalone. It won't rely on canon or lore from all 30 years of existing Power Rangers. It will be a hard reboot, and that will confuse some people, but people who watch it with an open mind will hopefully get carried along with the new show. And the main purpose of it, I think, is to generate new audiences for Power Rangers and to make Power Rangers cool again in a general public mind. I mean, it's always been cool with fans of the show, but that's not the audience that Hasbro want to reach. They want to reach a broad general audience. And I actually think if anyone can make it cool, Jonathan Entwistle is the right person for it, because his work to date has been fantastic that I've seen.
Yeah. His what is it? the end of the fucking world. If it's to that tune, which is still high school kids, which I'm gonna guess, I do not want to be high schoolers, but if it is, I can see where they're going.
Yeah, and also I'm not okay with this. I mean, both those shows, I think, have had a very authentic and modern take on teenagers, as opposed to some kind of shiny Hollywood idea of what teenagers might be.
Correct.
Yeah, because I was going to say I watched I'm Not Okay With This, and it was completely and utterly different from the take on even superpowers in general. I was very like, oh, that's very different, and I actually enjoyed it rather than just oh look, someone flies in and someone like shoots lasers from their eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, if it does go down that road, I think it's going to stand out, and I think it's going to be completely different from what we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Riverdale or Lois and Clark, or there are shows that have been reinventions of well-known franchises, and some of them have been very successful. And this one, I think, will be hopefully a little bit oddball and different and quirky, but still extremely well written and constructed, which Entwistle and Jenny Klein are absolutely the right people to do. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've just got my fingers crossed that in 18 months' time, or whenever it's about to go into production, Hasbro and Netflix still have the commitment to spend the money on it, because it will be hugely more expensive than the traditional Power Rangers to make, because Power Rangers is quite a low budget show, shot very quickly. And this, if they're wanting to compete with mainstream high quality TV shows, and if they're hour-long episodes, it's going to cost 5 or 6 times at least what old school Power Rangers costs.
Yeah, that's the thing about the current budget. How different was the budget for Cosmic Fury than you say the Dawn of Fury season 1 and season 2?
About the same, to be honest. We were hoping for a higher budget because we had to make a lot more original footage. Like there was a lot less Sentai. We didn't use any ground fight footage from Super Sentai, and a lot of the Zord footage we made ourselves as well, using the Toei 3D assets that we had. But because fight footage is the most time-consuming thing to shoot, we originally wanted another 2 weeks of second unit to be able to shoot more original footage. But in the end, that got cut right back, and the budget, it was the same budget. We just had to be more clever with how we spent it. And I would have liked more time to shoot, and I would have liked a lot more time on visual effects. Like we were really struggling with our visual effects resources to achieve what we wanted and to finish.
We could see that it was unfinished during the Zord fights. You could really see that it was like, wow, the textures aren't there. But I can see what it was going for. But I understand the limitation. It just sucked.
Well, it's about time. It's about time and money, basically.
Right.
I mean, we've certainly got the skill to be able to do better, but visual effects is a very time-consuming process, and we had very tight delivery deadlines on this. Right. So it was what it was. We could have made good original CG Zord footage, and it would have been CG rather than people in suits, because we don't have the studios that Toei have with their permanent miniature cities and where they shoot the Megazord fights. It's just phenomenal, and it would be hugely expensive to set that up. But in New Zealand, we've got pretty good visual effects teams and artists. If you look at Avatar and Lord of the Rings and the types of shows that get made here, Sweet Tooth, but you can't make a fine dining meal with a McDonald's budget, which is what we deal with. Yeah.
Now, quick question based off of that from one of our viewers. For the suit designers, were they made by Plex or were they made in-house?
They were made in-house. The designs were were very much a collaboration with Hasbro toy and brand people. Like there were lots of drafts in the designs. And a lot of the feedback was about making them more streamlined to mold and produce as toys. The original designs had a lot more texture on the costumes and interesting shapes, but those all got smoothed out in the consultation process. They were made in-house, same as the evil blue Ollie suit and various other costumes that you saw. The things that were made by Toei in Japan were Bagilia and Squilia, and I can talk spoilers, can't I?
Yes, you can. It's free reign.
The Morphin Master Z suit at the end. They were fabricated in Japan. We didn't work with Plex. I'd never heard of Plex until the complaints about the Cosmic Fury suits started appearing online. I understand they are connected with Bandai, which would make it very difficult for us to work with them. But, you know, our in-house people have made the Ranger suits for as long as I've been working with the show. We don't make the helmets because they're too difficult to make. And so we get one of each of the suits from Japan and we use those as patterns and we make our own suits because we have to have 4 or 5 versions of each suit for the actor, for the stunt performer, for wire performers, and all the various other things that we need to do. So it is a big, it's a big machine manufacturing the costumes for a show scale of Power Rangers.
So I'm quite curious. Where are the suits now? Were they destroyed, sent to back to Japan, or does Hasbro decide to kind of keep them about?
The assets that belonged to Toei were returned to Toei, and what those were the helmets, and the Ryu Soldier sabers. What we get is we get one of each of those kind of props, and then we would use those to mold and manufacture our own, because like the suits, we'd need about 5 or 6 copies of each of those weapons. The Cosmic Fury weapons and morphers we designed ourselves, and they were initially 3D printed. And the 3D prints were used as a mold to make more resilient versions. All the stuff that belonged to Toei went back to Japan, and everything else went back to Hasbro in the States and is in storage in a warehouse there somewhere, I imagine. There were containers full of props and costumes, because when we wound up in New Zealand, we had 3 or 4 warehouses full of sets and props and costumes that had to be either sent to landfill, destroyed, or returned to Hasbro.
That sucks. It would have been such a great opportunity to pretty much auction off these suits. Since it's
I know.
Power Rangers.
So with toys,
I managed to get a couple of helmets, but most of the suits would have gone back to Hasbro, at least the good ones. I think ones that were very worn or damaged would have been destroyed.
Come on, Simon, I need you to 5-finger discount me a Morpher prop. I need one.
With Toei making Master Zed and Squilia and Gilia, did they get to keep those, or does Hasbro get those?
Hasbro gets those. Oh, you mean the suits?
Yeah. So since they...
No, they've all gone back to Hasbro because they were original suits paid for out of the production budgets. They weren't assets that were owned by Toei. So what happens with every season is we borrow everything that's available from Toei of the Super Sentai season that we're adapting. They ship it all out to us. We make copies of everything for production purposes, and then we return it all after production. Anything original that they make for us, Hasbro gets to keep.
Okay.
Is the way it works.
So with the with the Ghost Ranger, with Zeto's Ghost Ranger helmet, since y'all only get like one mold of the helmets from Toei, is that why his helmet is still red and the rest of his suit is white, or was it always planned for his helmet to just remain red?
It'll remain red because we only had one of them, and it would be for scheduling purposes. if we change the color of the helmet, given that we shoot everything out of order, it would have been too problematic to keep switching colors of the helmet to match the shooting schedule. I guess we could have shot that one scene in Dino Fury when he appeared in the Ranger base last, but even so, we'd have had to allow a day or two for it to be repainted and for the paint to dry, and we wouldn't have had access to the helmet. We only, with the helmets, because they're so expensive to make, and we can't make them, we don't have the skills to do that, we only have one of each. We have a hero helmet and a stunt helmet, and the stunt helmet has the latches on the side. The hero helmet is glossy and for close-up use and non-fighting use. So sharing the helmets around is tricky. If we have Rangers on both main unit and second unit at the same time, like actors in Ranger costumes, then one has to be wearing the stunt helmet and the other has to be wearing the hero helmet, because we've only got one of each. And we spend a lot of time in post-production digitally painting out the clips on the stunt helmets. I hope that answers the question.
Yep.
Oh, definitely. There is one more question that was brought up by another listener. Something that has to do with the Dark Ranger. Now, we know he was introduced from one episode as like a spy. Was there any like reference there to maybe being a potential Dark Ranger special?
No. Becker and Allen always regretted not being able to have the Dark Ranger in Dino Charge, because for various permissions reasons, the suit wasn't available then. And so they really and they knew that fans liked the suit, so they wanted to find a way of bringing the character into Cosmic Fury. And also, they were a big fan of Heckle. This was before my time on the show, so I don't have any memory of Dino Charge because I didn't work on it. And so really it was about completing the circle and giving him a substantial cameo. Like he was in 2 episodes and he appeared briefly in a photo on Squillia's phone in a third. So it was a chunky cameo. But no, there was no intention to make a special or do anything else. And also, there have been comments about the red on the helmet not being correct as compared to the comics or the Sentai use of the suit. But we don't read the comics, so there's no consultation between Boom Studios and the TV show, basically, which is why we've always considered that they are their own separate canon. So this is the first time the suit appeared on the TV show. So in our heads, we were establishing the look of the suit on the TV show, and what was in the comics was its own canon. The practical reason it was blue rather than red was because that was how we received it from Toei, and Toei didn't want us changing the color on it, to be honest. So we didn't actually have any choice. But that's how we rationalize it as separate canon.
Cool. Now, piggybacking off that question there, was it somewhere stipulated in the contract where you couldn't reference the comics within live action, or is that something you personally didn't want to reference to where they kind of coincide adjacent to canon?
It's not contractual at all. It's just that the comics and the TV show evolve completely separately. There's no communication between the comics people and us. I haven't seen the comics. I don't read them. The only time I've actually taken the comics into consideration was when we were designing the Morphin Master suits for Dino Fury, when we looked at how the comics had handled them, and they were definitely an influence on the design there because we didn't want to do something completely at odds. But it was adapted for TV rather than a complete literal copy of the comics designs. But that's the only time I've actually referenced the comics, because we don't get them, we don't see them, and they're a completely separate thing. And that's the way it's always been. I do think that the comics are aimed at an older audience than the TV show, and I think they do a really good job of doing that. And they explore lore and expand on lore, and they do stuff that couldn't actually be done live action sometimes, and certainly wouldn't work for 7 or 8 year olds. But if there was ever an animated series of Power Rangers, I think they could do a lot worse than going to Boom Studios comics for inspiration, because the art is so cool from what I've seen.
Right.
So can we talk about Zato?
Yeah, go for it. I'll be limited in what I can say, but absolutely, ask away.
So me personally, I can't speak for nobody else, but I personally feel from your interactions with the fandom and like the complaint that has been brought up about Zato, I don't know if you don't understand where fans are coming from with their complaint, or if you just don't agree with it. So, saying things on Twitter, tweeting and stuff is totally different from actually hearing somebody speak their piece on a situation. So, I wanted to hear what you had to say on the topic of Zato and, the obvious complaint that has been going on.
Okay, let's start. I have read, and I think I understand the criticisms that from some people towards the depiction of Zato in Cosmic Fury. It's not my place as a white man to comment on whether the criticisms are accurate or not, or even to defend the depiction. I think that once people have seen it, then they can make up their own minds as to whether it's valid or a demotion or a promotion or whatever the criticisms are. But I can understand how it feels, particularly with Zato being not there for pretty much for the first 3 episodes, and for the fact that he is kind of an outsider with the rest of the Ranger team, and that he has very limited powers. At the end of the season, he ascends to become a Morphin Master, which is something that has never happened to a Power Ranger before and is far more powerful than any other Ranger could ever be. And all I can talk about really is the intention behind what we were doing, rather than how it is perceived. Everyone has their own perfectly valid response to what they're watching and how they feel about it. I mean, the intention, when Zato sacrificed himself at the end of Dino Fury and came back as a Ghost Ranger in that final scene, in our heads, he was different to the other Rangers. It wasn't that he was normal and just another Ranger and would just carry on as Red Ranger as he always had been. He'd been recreated in the grid and sent back by the Morphin Masters for a particular purpose, to fulfill a particular task. And in our heads, it was a finite task. He would eventually return to the grid in some form or other. So he was on borrowed time. And in our heads, writing this, that created a lot of poignancy and sadness, particularly for Ion, who was his friend. And so it became a story about someone with enormous power, but very limited use of that power because it was finite, trying to make the right decisions about how to use it in order to save his friends. And it was a story about friendship more than anything else. But there was also, and we did talk about this while we were writing it, there was also a Christ-like allegory at work there with Zato, in that, on the 3rd day, he rose again, say at the end of Dino Fury, and he was around for a limited time in order to make connection with his friends and help out on particular tasks. But ultimately, he was always going to ascend. And he did ascend at the end of Cosmic Fury. And, we were under strict instructions from Hasbro to make sure that his returning to the grid didn't look at all Christ-like. But in terms of the allegory or the myth that we were calling on for Zato, that was the one we were using. When I was responding online to people who hadn't seen Cosmic Fury, saying that because Amelia had become Red Ranger, Zato had been demoted, and I was saying he hasn't been demoted, but I can't tell you what happens because it would be a spoiler. In my head, we had made Zato the most powerful Ranger ever by promoting him to be a Morphin Master. and his trajectory from the very end of Dino Fury was always towards the end of Cosmic Fury. But having said that, I hear and respect the criticisms that have been leveled at it, and I can't really argue because it's not my place to do so. People will take from the show what they choose to take from it.
So
Well said.
I appreciate that, because obviously that whole topic has caused a lot of drama in the fandom over the last year, but it doesn't necessarily stem from the fact that Zato is becoming a Morphin Master. I personally don't look at becoming a Morphin Master as a demotion, but because of what the Red Ranger represents to Power Rangers, that is more so the issue that fans have. It was never about Amelia being female or Amelia actually becoming a Red Ranger, but this is one of the few instances in Power Rangers where a member of this team is now replacing another member of this team as the Red Ranger. And again, because of what the Red Ranger represents to Power Rangers, it's a heavy task. And in my opinion, obviously Hasbro and everyone working on Cosmic Fury knows this because Amelia is becoming the Red Ranger. It's a significant moment. It's a big moment. So it's like, yeah, Zato is becoming a Morphin Master, but for the casual audience that Hasbro wants to target, they don't know who the Morphin Masters are. The Morphin Masters have only become a relevant thing in the last 3 years, but the Red Ranger has always been a constant, and it's always been the figurehead of the brand as a whole. So putting that on Amelia is great. Nobody is arguing that, I don't think, and I don't think anybody could contest that. And I personally feel like from watching Cosmic Fury, she did a good job as Red. It was earned. It was deserved. It's just more so the argument of Zato, like him going from Red Ranger to Zenith Ranger, this color we've never seen before, and he's still on the team despite where things end up. It feels like he gets sidelined, and we've had seasons that have had 2 Red Rangers, and the fact that we couldn't do something like that feels like, the whole purpose is to put all of the Red Ranger focus on Amelia, which is, again, that's okay. But when you have, when you look back on the history of Power Rangers, which fans did, and it's like, okay, you go from Turbo to In Space, the whole production point was to give us Tommy 2.0 and Andros. So even though they had thought about making TJ Red, they made Andros Red because the Red Ranger is the leader, and then you look at SPD. Jack is literally ridden out of the show and Sky is promoted. That was always the natural line of things in SPD, but this is something that happened on a second occasion, and you look at the other seasons with black leaders, RPM is about the Black Ranger. It's not really about the Red Ranger, but the Red Ranger is still the leader. Beast Morphers, I would say that it's more so about Nate than anything and less about Devin. Devin had his moments, but, that's a thing. He doesn't really, shine. So, when you get here, this is the first time that we're having a Black Red Ranger 2 years in a row. And he had a very strong start. He was, in my opinion, characterized like no other. Like, he was definitely different. But that him not fulfilling that, I guess, for some fans, it made it feel like we were shortchanged, and that was the whole complaint. I know people took it in different avenues and tried to make different complaints, but in my opinion, it's not about him becoming a Morphin Master. I get what the Morphin Masters are supposed to represent narratively, but the complaint goes beyond the narrative. It goes beyond what the story is telling. It goes beyond it's about the representation and what the Red Ranger holds and how significant he is. And, you know, I had a space earlier where I talked about, you know, why wasn't Zato just a White Ranger? You know, his Ghost Ranger suit is white. It would have felt like more of a natural evolution. And white is the only other color that has been treated as an equal to the Red Ranger from a production promotion standpoint, even in Sentai, you know. So if Zato would have been white, it would have felt different. But we're getting thrown a new color. It almost feels like, you know, this being a season with so many firsts, it's like, oh, he's just getting a new color as a consolation prize because he's not red anymore. So there's a lot of avenues and ways for fans to look at this. But, you know, I do appreciate your response. You know, I think that I do think that it could ease a lot of fans' nerves the way you presented your argument.
Thank you. I understand the criticism, absolutely, and I can't really comment on it or defend it other than to say the intentions were based on love of the character. Also, bear in mind the word zenith means at the apex or the highest point of something. So, you know, what we were doing in terms of the narrative, which is different to the optics, I quite understand that, was really out of respect for the character. Something else that's interesting from what you just said was that we always wanted Zato to be the White Ranger. We called him White Ranger internally when he came back at the end of Dino Fury, and we wanted him to be White Ranger through Cosmic Fury, but Hasbro said no. And the reason for that was that calling a black character White Ranger might be perceived as being divisive or offensive to some. So we couldn't go down that path.
I have a quick
That's
question.
crazy.
Oh my
Seeing
God.
as how that was.
Hold on.
Out of pocket.
I have a question.
I'm
for that.
flabbergasted.
Hold on, Simon. I know you still you fresh to the show. We literally have a black White Ranger, and I know it ain't on you, but that's crazy as hell because Haley was literally the last White Ranger, and she's a black woman from New Zealand at that.
I know. I worked with her. I directed. I directed Ninja Steel. So yeah, I know that. But what happens within a company like Hasbro is that they will replace their brand people who are actually the client for Power Rangers every 2 or 3 years. So every time a new team comes on board, they want to put their own mark on something and improve it in their minds. So I worked with 3 or 4 completely different sets of people at Hasbro over the time I was working on the show, all with their own quite different ideas. And with the people who were dealing with the development period of Cosmic Fury, this was something that they felt very strongly about. So it was one of those things that I tried to push back, but the answer was no. And I agree, it's ridiculous. I come across some really ridiculous things. For example, Morphomaster Zed writing a Z on the side of the mountain with his staff to demonstrate his power, and Izzy thinking it looks more like an N, was a direct reference to some notes we got from Hasbro about the costume design, where they were concerned that if he was lying down, the Z on his stuff would look like an N, and that would be confusing to the audience. You know, it's that kind of stuff that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we made a joke of it in the actual script. But sometimes you're left completely on your own, and other times there's a lot of hands-on control, and particularly in areas that might be perceived as being sensitive. Another example of this is that Robo Rita's mask design, like the face, went through about 4 or 5 different drafts because Hasbro were concerned it looked too Japanese, and they were accusing us of being of cultural appropriation. And I tried to argue that the entire show is cultural appropriation if you're going to follow that argument, because nearly all the designs in the show are actually Japanese or from Japan, but that didn't wash either. So those are the kinds of tricky pathways that we have to navigate.
Yeah, I'm glad you've been transparent about it because Hasbro has been the conflicting insert in a lot of development and production of their shows, particularly Power Rangers. Kind of exactly like the Zato type of thing being Zenith. I think it would have been a lot more poignant if he stayed the Red Ranger and still ended up at the same outcome of becoming a Morphin Master. But it seemed
Yeah.
like all that was deflected for something else.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it's the optics of the color change and alongside Amelia's promotion that just send a really less than desirable message to the world. I completely get it.
Right.
It was not the intention, but a whole bunch of factors created what we ended up with that could be seen to create that impression. I mean, I actually really like Zato's story and Ion's story as well. I directed the scenes in the White Room where Ion meets the person he thinks is Zato, and it turns out to be someone different. And I just loved working with them both on those scenes, and I thought they played
It's out.
beautifully.
We could say it. It's out. People have seen it. It's Zordon. We
Yeah.
could spoil it.
Yeah, that was a good
Was there
scene.
ever any
Big
talk
Z.
in getting David to voice him again? To voice Zordon?
No,
No.
because we wanted to leave it ambiguous as to whether it was Zordon or not, and we wanted some of the audience to go have an aha light bulb moment, and others not to realize until the very end of the last episode when Billy twigs. So if we'd had David voice him there, I think it would have been blatantly, glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
And you know, even Zordon wasn't sure who he was. He had appeared to Ion in Zato's form, and because his energy was spread through the grid, he had some knowledge and some memories, but it was all a bit hazy, I think, for him. So I personally wanted to keep it ambiguous and as a jigsaw puzzle piece for the fans to put together.
Oh, an artistic
I see.
choice.
Yeah.
Is there for the other Rangers? So you made perfect sense of why Amelia became Red and why Zato became Zenith. But was it just technically like supposed to be a natural evolution for the other Rangers to remain their same colors, or did y'all ever think about changing any of the other Rangers' colors?
No, we didn't. We wanted them to be the same color Rangers that they had been. We didn't see any story reason that would necessitate them changing colors, really. I mean, I know people have said we're missing pink or we're missing yellow or why isn't there this color in the team? But I thought like Harley was clearly established as black and Izzy was clearly established as green, that their identities and their association with those colors was strong and clear.
Okay. What about Fern? I mean, obviously, y'all wanted to give us the first Orange Ranger, which I think
Yeah.
everybody appreciates. So, like, what about like picking her dinosaur? You know, and just everything. Why was she chosen to be like from a production standpoint? Why was Jacqueline Joe chosen, and just everything?
Basically because we really liked her as a character in Dino Fury, and she had the close relationship with Izzy, and we thought, well, if they're going to be stuck in a base on another planet, you know, millions of light years away, what would be interesting stories that might arise from that, and being stuck with your partner who is not a ranger, and the stresses when you can't morph yourself that these might put on the relationship, I think was the reason why we wanted Fern to go along for the ride. And there was a lot more Izzy Fern story in the 20 episode version than we were able to keep in the 10 episode version. Like they actually did break up because Izzy was being overprotective of her girlfriend, and Fern resented that and wanted to be able to go on adventures and leave the base herself. So there was more depth in that particular story. In terms of why she became a ranger, we just thought it was cool. You know, it was a nice story. We liked the connection with Solon, who's another character that we really like. And we thought that it would be nice if she earned her ranger stripes, so to speak, by saving Solon's life. and that Solon became her spirit dinosaur, even though a Solanosaurus obviously is a fictitious dinosaur, but then so is a saber-toothed tiger when you look at it. So those were the kinds of reasons behind why we did what we did. It was to enable us to tell the stories that we wanted to tell, which is always, I think, the most important thing when you're devising a drama.
So going back to what you said about the helmets, her helmets is obviously a repaint and then a remold of Amelia's, the Pink Ranger helmet from Ryu Soldier. I personally don't have a problem with it, but some people randomly decided to have a problem with it, as if this isn't something we see often in Sentai. So and I think honestly, the helmet actually looks more like Solon than it does an Ankylosaurus. So where did that decision come from?
It was really, we tweaked the helmet with a few additions to make it more, to differentiate them. But the fact with the helmets is we don't have the resource to make our own helmets, which is why we ended up with the Ryu Soldier helmets still being used after they changed into Cosmic Fury Rangers. It was budget. They're really, really expensive to make, those helmets, and we just didn't have the ability to do it. I agree, in an ideal world, they would have all have been original. I completely agree with that. On the other side of that argument, we wanted to keep their connection to their particular dinosaurs alive, and that was because Hasbro wanted to maintain the dino theme, because it is obviously popular and sells toys right through Cosmic Fury. So there are all those kinds of pressures on the decisions that you make. Personally, because something is done in Sentai, I don't think is a strong reason to do it in a show that is trying to break the mold and be its own thing. I mean, if I'd had the budget, we wouldn't have used any Sentai footage in Cosmic Fury, because I think the Zord footage is some of the weakest aspects of it. And that's because we the resources we had to use the Toei digital assets for the Zords, which were, of their time. Complete. Yeah, they were of their time. They were good, but they didn't live up to what modern expectations of CG Zords would or should be. I mean, the original stuff that we did, like the Scuttleworms, I think that we'd built and designed ourselves, looked really cool, and. Yeah. So we have the capability, but just not the time or money to be able to do the whole thing, and that's something that I feel a little bit sad about. But then again, I think, well, this is a show for 7-year-olds, and what we're giving them is pretty spectacular. And some of the stuff we do really well. Like, I think some of the action fight footage is great, but the visual effects, there's a huge amount of room for improvement.
Just hopefully when Hasbro moves on with this reboot, they don't completely stifle the creativity of Jonathan Entwistle and what his team is putting together with budget and things like that. So
no, they will have to spend the money if they want it to succeed as a competition with other properties, as a young adult show on a streaming platform that is a flagship show. It can't give it the kids show resources. It'll have to be budgeted properly, and I can't imagine, Jenny Klein or Jonathan Entwistle working with an inadequate budget.
Yeah, that's what frightens me, because even though they may want this budget and what they script up may call for this budget, if Hasbro and Netflix don't approve it, they could walk away, and we get the PR statement of they parted ways by creative differences. Yeah. We hear that night and day, and that's what I don't want.
Yeah, that happens a lot in the entertainment industry for those kinds of reasons. Absolutely. I hope it doesn't happen either.
With the
I'm allowed to add.
I wanted to ask: was there any draft where there was a fight with this suit?
Which suit are you talking
Zed's
about?
master suit.
No, there wasn't. I don't think that suit would withstand a fight, to be honest. It's ornate and it's a bit fragile. But no, we didn't plan it. if we had planned it, the suit would have been quite different. It would have been designed to be an action suit. We'd have had to have had two of them.
I see.
No, I mean, it's another criticism that I've read online is that the climax wasn't action heavy enough, that there should have been a final battle. But I actually think that Morphin Master Zed would have wiped the floor of the Rangers, to be honest.
I mean, he said fuck all the floors. He blew all of them up. He blew all the floors
That's
up.
true.
So was there
That's right.
ever any plans for Zed to be actually defeated, or was it supposed to always have this like ending where he could be redeemed?
Oh, no, like this
He's
ending
not.
at
He's
all.
not. He's not really redeemed. He's put in some kind of version of hell where he's forever having to deal with Rita Repulsa. But what we wanted was two things. Was one, that the other monsters that he thought were serving him to double cross him, which is what happens. So he ends up trapped in the Master Captivator. And the other thing we wanted to happen was that Zato would convince Morphin Master Zed to step down, basically to save himself, which is what happened. So it became about manipulation, strategy, and cleverness rather than about brute force. Because I think on a brute force level, Morphin Master Zed would always win, because he's got the power of all the Morphin Masters inside him. So what Zato did was very clever. And there's a lot of debate about whether Lord Zed would ever actually agree to submit in the way that he did. And I get that. But I think that there is a little bit of a coward in Zed, in that if his own life is threatened, when push comes to shove, he might take the easier way out. And I like the fact that he's in this perpetual prison with Rita Repulsa for eternity, because it seems like a fit punishment for someone
his
with
wife, though.
ego.
So somebody asked me about that. Somebody messaged me about the whole Zed thing. So in Dino Theory, it's explained that this version of Zed, this particular version of Zed, is the Zed that is plucked from a time when he was at his strongest. And since basically his ultimate hell is being stuck with Rita, it's pretty much implied that season 2, season 3 is when Zed was his strongest. And I see some people have a problem with it because in season 1, in season 2 and season 3, Zed is so goofy and he loses so much that I guess it kind of confuses. It kind of confused a few people. I didn't actually pay attention to that point. Somebody pointed it out to me, so I'm just asking you.
I think Regal says in Dino Fury that he's brought Zed back from when he was at his most evil rather than his strongest.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I think it probably is season 1 Zed before he becomes too goofy. But remember when I think it was Ion and Zato in Dino Fury went to Nibiru and met versions of their Ranger team who kept attacking them and fighting them. Part of the magic of that place is that it creates enemies or people that you clash with out of people that it's plucked from your memories or your imaginations. So even though Zed and Rita might have loved each other in real life, the version of Rita that is in this particular version of hell is kind of a projection or a creation that is there to torment him.
Okay.
I have another.
I get it.
So
It seems like it was a very analytical standpoint to put Rita, because from my perspective, at that point in time, Zed had no knowledge of Rita. They wasn't married. So for that to be his nightmare or his personal hell, for me, was completely left field and confusing. It's kind of like, how would that be his hell if he doesn't even know this woman?
Fair enough. I think there are probably occasions like this where continuity is bent slightly to suit the story. I think we just liked the idea of Zed trapped in a hellish relationship situation with Rita, who was voiced by Susan Brady, who was the voice of the Mystic Mother back in the day, which is why we thought it would be okay for her to do the voice. because Cosmic Fury being non-union, we couldn't get the same brilliant voice actor who did Once and Always, which was union.
I see.
Right. Right.
I have a Zed question real quick. Again, sorry. So we know that the Dino Fury, the person who voiced him in Dino Fury, decided not to come back for Cosmic Fury. Fred Tatasciore, was he recommended by Hasbro, or did you guys just reach out to him?
He was recommended by Hasbro,
Okay.
and we auditioned about 7 or 8 very experienced US voice actors who'd done a lot of work.
Yeah, that's why I was
With
surprised.
Kerry Rosenberg, yeah. So that was how we landed on him, and he was fantastic. He was great to work with. I mean, no one can do the true, authentic, absolute Zed, but I think he did a great job. And before every cue in ADR, we would play him clips of the original Zed to listen to and try and get into that mode and that pitch and that timbre. And I saw someone saying, criticizing him, his voice is too high, but actually. Some of the amazing Axelrod's voice, it was higher than you think, whereas Andrew Lang's Zed was much more your kind of gruff, growly, traditional villain voice. But the original Zed had a lot of sardonic inflection in the way he played, and we were trying to replicate at least some of the character of that Zed, if not an actual if not a pure sound-alike. Because I don't think anyone could actually do that. And I know there are lots of people online who think my friend could do better than that. But to be able to sustain it and craft a performance across multiple episodes is a particular skill, and it's a bit different to just doing an impression of someone.
Well said. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for saying that, because a lot of these fans out here think they could do a better job
I know.
than who was actually given a paycheck for it.
No, they can't even flip a burger better. But
To ask about another evil person for a minute, what was like the design process and like the inspiration you guys got for making that evil Ollie suit? Because it is fantastic, and I kind of want to know how you guys like created that whole thing, like the morpher, the sword, and stuff like that. If you could mention any of that at all.
Yeah, I think we looked at some of the power-ups from Ryusoulger. Dino Fury as an inspiration, with the big shoulder armor pieces. It was definitely following those lines, but it was an original design. Sarah Voon, our costume designer, came up with sketches, and everyone liked them, and so we went ahead and built it. So it was quite simple in a way. The morpher that he had was simply a Ryusoulger Dino Fury morpher painted blue. It was the same thing. His weapon, like the Tricerablaster, was one of the original weapon designs that Tracy Collins did, and there was quite a lot of versions and drafts of those made to get them to where everyone was happy with them. Like Hasbro approved everything. Again, for toy design purposes, although whether there ever will be toys or not is
if they make a toy, I'm buying. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's not a one-person job. Basically, the designer will come up with sketches and show them to me, and I will make notes, and they will make modifications. And when I'm really happy with something, we'll send it to the people at Hasbro, who will share it with the toy team, who will come back with notes. Some of the notes will be from brand, like we need the lightning flash on everything. And some of the notes will be from toy, for instance, can you smooth this off? It'll make it easier to manufacture, those kinds of notes. So, and we try and accommodate all those notes, make changes, send them back. Maybe we get some more notes, and eventually everything's signed off on. Usually it's at the point where if they don't sign off on it, it's never going to be made in time, because those twos and fros could go on forever. So that's kind of the process. I mean, everyone wants to make something really cool that ticks all the boxes that need to be ticked.
Thank you.
Can you talk about Ollie being evil, like the whole idea behind it? Yeah, because that's the best part of the show.
This was born out of the situation that when we were locking in the cast for Cosmic Fury, just after we'd finished filming Dino Fury. Kai Moyer was the only actor who couldn't commit. He wasn't, because he had other work in the pipeline. He wasn't sure that he could come back to New Zealand to do Cosmic Fury. So we had to write Ollie in a way that Ollie could stay suited the entire season and played by a suit actor, with Kai voicing him from the States via ADR. So the only way that would work was if the character was separate from the other Rangers, and we thought, let's make him a villain, and let's because we did it in one episode in Dino Fury, and back then Rangers were only allowed to be evil for one episode, and they had to be cured within that episode. But all those kind of restrictions had been lifted. So by having Ollie evil and in Lord Zed's camp meant that should Kai not be available, he could stay morphed and stay a suit actor, and be separate from the Rangers from a scheduling and shooting point of view. So it was a pragmatic thing. However, luckily, Kai was available and came and joined us. He was actually really happy to be evil for most of the season.
We can tell.
Yeah.
He's good. He's good at being evil.
He had a great time. He loved it. He did a fantastic job. I mean, there's that one shot where he was wearing sunglasses in the Ranger base, that everyone. I've read stuff today about why was that cut from the show? It was never part of the show. It was a camera test, which is what we do, a screen test. Before we start shooting, is we look at all the characters and the costumes and the makeup under lighting in the sets, just to make fine tuning tweaks and things before we start filming. So that bit of footage was from a camera test rather than ever being part of the show.
I just like how Circumstance created one of the greatest characters in Power Rangers that we have.
Yeah, it's great. It couldn't have been better. I'm really pleased. I liked how when his statue was destroyed, he pretended to continue to be evil, and then warned everyone what Zed was up to. I just thought he played it so well.
Yeah.
You guys cooked that.
Yeah, my highlight from Ollie was when he threw the sword at Amelia's face. I was like, "Oh, he's not playing."
When he tried to shoot Fern right in the face.
Yes, he was not playing.
Equal rights, equal us, bro.
Was it Ollie who blasted the hole through the middle of the sky?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes,
we would never have been able to get away with that on Nickelodeon. Like all the gory stuff with Fern blasting the scuttleworms in the cave, I thought was just fantastic, and we couldn't have done that in previous seasons.
Oh, quick question, switching gears. When you guys chose to design the weapons, whose choice was it to give Fern a back scratcher as a weapon?
I never saw it as a back scratcher. Basically, we looked at a whole range of traditional martial arts weapons, as well as blasters and obviously a hammer. We also wanted the weapons to somehow connect visually with the particular dinosaur that was the spirit dinosaur of each ranger. I think if you look closely at Fern's back scratcher, you'll see that the head is a little Solon with the feathers.
Oh.
I'll have to go look at it and blow it out. That is too cute.
I think so.
You see the head? Yeah, no, the head is at the bottom of it, and then it's Solon. Yeah, Solon even says like, "Oh, your weapon is my claw." I think it's meant to be Solon's claw. Solon's claw at one end and head at the other, and it breaks up to be nunchuckers. And it was really, we also wanted each weapon to be quite different to each other and have a different function, so that the fighting would be more interesting, because everyone having the same saber in Dino Fury did mean that there was a sameness to the action at times. So what was some of the team canon? Because you got these weapons, right? And it's not practical at all. Like you can't form that cannon with those weapons. Like how
no,
did
I know. Well, how's it come about? We were asked to do a combined blaster, and it's ironic because I got so much criticism for them not doing it in Once and Always, not using their combined weapon in Once and Always. And now all the criticism is about they go to all that trouble to make a combined weapon. It's pathetic, and the I think my track record with combined weapons is a definite F fail, and I will never be the one to get that right, sadly. Where it came from is we were asked to make a combined weapon, and it was designed by Tracy Collins and approved, and it had elements of all the individual weapons, but no one really thought about how they changed shape and form to make that big weapon. So by the time we got to visual effects to start to design the formation of the weapon, the art department had long left the building. Like this was months after production had shut. So we had the 3D models from the production design of the combined weapon, but it didn't break into its component parts. So in the end, we outsourced that particular sequence to a external visual effects house because we didn't have the time to do it in-house. It took a lot of time and effort. And they said, as we knew, we can't make the individual weapons form into this thing. So we got them to do a sequence where there was movement within each of the weapons, each of the component parts of the combined weapon as part of the formation sequence. And that was actually the best we could do with what we had in the time, to be honest. Since I do that kind of stuff so well, but it's partly a factor of it wasn't designed to come apart from the outset, so that when you come to actually create the formation sequence, you realize very quickly, that isn't going to work. We've got to do something because there's 5 seconds of black that we have to fill in the cut, and let's try and come up with something that looks cool but is definitely a bit of a fudge.
Yeah.
What about Mick? Mick's whole role in all of this. I mean, Mick is probably like the only thing that people like from Ninja Steel. So,
Same.
and I personally, I always was like, man, it never made sense to me in season 2 that they didn't restore him and Dane's ninja stars, how they did like literally every other ninja star. So, what was the idea behind making Mick a ranger again and bringing him back?
Well, let's not talk about Ninja Steel.
Say less. Say less.
It was my first exposure to Power Rangers Ninja Steel, and it was interesting. Anyway, let's not talk about Ninja Steel. We all love Kelson. we all love the character of Mick. By we, I mean me and Becca and Alwyn. And given this might well be our last chance, Kelson has been a regular player. He's the most valued player, I think, in so many seasons of Power Rangers. So we wanted to bring him back. And it felt right for him to have a bit of a function early on in the season where he was out and about looking for things and tracking things down. And we also thought that it was plausible that he might have met up with Billy somewhere and they might both be doing some research. I mean, Billy from the end of Once and Always, and this is another whole conversation, was convinced that Zordon might still be out there somewhere because obviously he'd accidentally summoned up the spirit of Rita. So why not the same with Zordon? And at the end of Once and Always, he pledged he was going to go into space. So in our heads, between then and the beginning of Cosmic Fury, he'd met up with Mick, and they were both searching, looking for clues, looking for lore, looking for tech that might help him make connection with Zordon. I've jumped onto a different subject here, but I might as well finish it. So at the end of Cosmic Fury, when Billy gets the clue through the lyrics in Harvey's song and Ion lets him know about the being he met in the void, that makes him realize, or it confirms for him that yes, Zordon is still out there somewhere in the grid, and it gives him a new resolve to do something about it. And that is the little open thing that we left at the end of the season that may or may not ever be picked up on by the comics or by the next iteration. But we did want to leave in people's minds that for Billy, he may eventually realize his goal and find the mentor that he's been looking for. So jumping back to Kelsom, I mean, the reason we wanted him back is that we liked him. We needed a character to serve various functions. We were originally going to bring back Ninja just for interest in an earlier plan for the season. But we went with Mick instead because we really like the actor, and we thought, well, if he's going to be there, let's make him his Ranger form again. And there was more fight footage with Mick in that big battle at the start, but we had to cut it out just because of duration. There was so much that we had to squeeze into that episode that we probably trimmed about 5 or 6 minutes worth of footage just to get it down to the 22:30 that it had to be.
Release the Pookie cut.
Facts. We need a Pookie cut.
It wouldn't be any good without the visual effects. That's the problem.
I'm sure the fans could easily just be like, yeah, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah, get Hurricane Gold on it.
Yeah. How do you so you mentioned earlier about there not actually being like a sixth ranger for the team or something to that effect. And my argument to it is, well, like, Zato is a Morphin Master now, and there's only 6 rangers left. At the beginning of Dino Fury, all 6 rangers got their powers at once, and Ion got a different suit, different morpher, which is the signifiers of a 6th ranger. And here in Cosmic Fury, even though he has the same morpher, he still has a different suit, which is obviously the evolution of his Dino Fury suit. So, but you're saying he's not the 6th ranger, but it's like it's kind of hard not to look at him as the 6th ranger when he literally fits the traditional 6th ranger trope still.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that we had put a lot of consideration into, to be honest, and we probably should have. But I think whatever viewers want to take away from what they see, like if you want to think of him as a 6th ranger, then that's fine. But I do think that, like, Ion coming in episode 7 or whenever it was of Dino Fury was really driven by footage, Sentai footage, in that we had a whole lot of footage without that ranger in it. So we had to introduce them later when we did. And I think that the tradition of the 6th ranger is a Super Sentai tradition that has had to be followed by Power Rangers over the years because they have to follow the footage. Because we didn't have to follow the footage with Cosmic Fury, it wasn't that we made a conscious decision, let's not do the 6th ranger this time. It's just that there wasn't a 6th ranger, and I suspect that the trope or the convention of the 6th ranger has become immortalized or baked in to the Power Ranger mythos simply because that's the way it's been. But in the shows I've been involved in, the seasons I've been involved in, it's been probably a much lesser deal than it has been in fans' minds. It's been we've got to delay the introduction of this character for footage reasons, and when we do introduce them, because they're coming in later, let's make a big deal about it. But it wasn't really a consideration for Cosmic Fury. Like, is Mick the 6th ranger? Is Ion the 6th ranger? Is Zato the 6th ranger? I don't know. We didn't have a designated 6th ranger. So I would say that's either a failing on our part or it's something that you can decide yourselves when you watch it.
I don't think it's a failing. So my counter argument to that is this. It's not a failing on y'all part at all, because the thing is this. I don't know how aware you are of Sentai, but the thing is, Power Rangers started with the first Sentai to have a 6th Ranger. And moving forward, even in Sentai seasons that didn't have 6th Rangers, Power Rangers made those accommodations. For example, in Turbo doesn't have a 6th Ranger, but they made the counterpart of the Phantom Ranger a Ranger. same thing with Magnet Defender and Lost Galaxy. We have an all original Ranger in the Titanium Ranger. So like it's more of a staple for Power Rangers than it is Sentai, because there's still Sentai without Sixth Rangers. But since Power Rangers started with the Sentai that started Sixth Rangers, it's kind of just been the tradition. So I can understand your point of view, like y'all didn't put too much thought into it because obviously this is following up after Dino Fury. So it's like most of these guys are getting the powers at the same time. But yeah, it's just one of those little things. Like it's kind of just like, okay, well, you know, if all six Mighty Morphin Rangers transition to Zeo, you know, we would ask the same question, like who's considered the sixth here and not. But you know, when there is no clear answer, we typically just go to what we know in the tropes, the different morpher, the different suit, et cetera, et cetera. So that was where I was coming from with it.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I do think, and this is controversial ground too, is that, you know, one of the challenges and one of the problems for anyone making Power Rangers now is that there are, you know, 30 years of history, and there was actually very little planned consistency between seasons. Each season was its own thing, based on the particular Sentai that was being adapted, based on the particular ideas of whoever was the showrunner and the writer at the time. And when you look at all the lore and what is and what isn't canon and what dimensions different teams may or may not exist in, it becomes incredibly messy and inconsistent. And because humans, part of what we do is we try and impose order on chaos. Everyone has tried to find consistencies between a whole lot of stuff where there is none. And I think a lot of what we've been doing with Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury has been to try and solve some of the huge inconsistencies that exist within Power Rangers canon to lesser or greater levels of success. I mean, the whole Morphin Masters thing was a Chip Lin idea, and that was supported by Hasbro at the time, which was, you know, let's bring in these godlike beings that got mentioned briefly in MMPR and have been referred to in the comics, and they can be the reasons why a whole lot of inexplicable stuff happened across the years. And so we went down that path, and what we found very quickly was that having all-powerful beings who can fix any problem with the wave of a wand and create rangers and and grid devices left, right, and center basically completely disempowers any team of Power Rangers, because as soon as they get into trouble, it takes the stakes out of a story, basically. So we decided with Cosmic Fury, the first thing we had to do was take the Morphin Masters off the table and that raises the stakes hugely, because no one can ride into the rescue. I mean, the whole Deus Ex Machina thing in drama, yes, it was a big thing in Greek and Roman theatre, but you try and avoid it because, you know, if you know that an outside force is going to come in and solve all the problems, then the story is completely unsatisfying. So that was the consequence of what we had to do. And I'm not sure quite what started me on this train of thought, but there you go.
No, thank you. We appreciate it. That's something that, you know, the fandom questions a lot, is the Morphin Masters. So it's nice to see like where that idea came from and what you guys went through to take them, like you said, off the table so that it wouldn't affect the storyline of Cosmic Fury.
Facts.
Mm-hmm. Simon, I do have to ask though, what is the kind of obsession with squid monsters?
Becca Barnes has a thing for tentacles. Don't ask me why or where it came from. You'll notice there's an octopus and Dino Fury. She just loves things with tentacles and cats, but tentacles particularly. So it's a taste issue.
Yeah, because we saw like the art for Janet, and she was kind of like tentacle-y as well. So I was wondering, like, where is this coming from? And with that,
well, Janet,
was there a reason that the monster from She Ranger that is like tentacle-like wasn't used?
A lot of those Q Ranger monsters were rejected by Hasbro as being unsuitable for kids by the people who were in brand at the time we were building the show.
Okay.
So they might be a little bit adult in the depiction of some aspects of the characters, like some of the characters from earlier Power Rangers seasons would never have happened with that particular overview. I mean, I got notes about things like, you know, the texture of the metal in Lord Zed's fortress looks too much like a torture chamber. Can you change it? You know, just really, really strange notes. But yeah, I mean, some of those Japanese monsters, particularly the female ones, are very busty and not, you know, not considered, lots of cleavage, not considered suitable for kids. And some of them might be a bit phallic, not considered suitable for kids. So it's an example of the Japanese sensibility being quite different to what is perceived to be the American one in a kids show.
Yeah,
I was going to ask,
for
did
being
you guys?
transparent, because that definitely calms a lot of questions that the fandom had.
I was going to say, like, did you guys handpick all the suits, or did like Toei just send you a bunch of random ones, or was it kind of like you guys just went through the Sentais that weren't adapted and like, oh, we're going to use the pirate guy from Zoodra, et cetera, like stuff like that, or was it more just random?
No, our communications with Toei, because of the language gap, have to be very clear. And we send a lot of Excel spreadsheets with photographs of the objects that we are talking about in them. Because we had licensed Q Ranger, we had access to all those suits that still existed and props. And Toei very kindly contacted us and said, we're clearing out our warehouses and we've got a whole lot of spare costumes. Are you interested in any of these? And they sent us a spreadsheet with all the photographs of the monster suits that they were throwing out. And we said, oh, yes, we'll have those. Thank you very much. Because we wanted cannon fodder. We wanted lots of monsters for the scale of what we were trying to do. So it came out of a very kind offer from Toei, and we said yes to that.
So I guess I'm gonna have to ask because don't nobody else want to ask. Okay. Q Ranger. So it's being like, I personally got Q Ranger muted, but it keep on seeping its way through my timeline. Everybody has been asking, like, we're being told that Q Ranger can't be adapted because there's too many Rangers and different things, but there's 10 Rangers that show up in Cosmic Fury. Of course, you have the 7 Cosmic Fury Rangers. We never get to see all 7 of them together, which I hope you can expand on that a little bit too. And then we got Billy, Heckle, and Mick. So, you know, there's a core 9 Q Rangers. We see 10 or so Rangers. So, like, when it comes down to it and choosing to do original suits over just doing using the Q Ranger suits with original footage, what was the more in-depth decision? Because you weren't able to go that deep into it over some tweets or, you know, the little interview you had when you revealed Cosmic Fury last year.
Yeah, there are lots of reasons for it. One of them is that Heckle, Billy, and Mick, we really wanted to keep in their trademark suits rather than change their powers, because it just felt right that Mick stayed an MMPR Ranger, and that Mick still had his Ninja Steel suit, and that Heckle had the Dark Ranger suit. You know, I think they're associated very strongly with those particular teams, and so that would have left us with seven Cosmic Fury Rangers, which we could have adopted the human Q Ranger suits. I mean, some of them are not human, which would have been very weird if human or Rafconian Rangers had morphed into various animals. But the fundamental reason is that there was no desire or interest within Hasbro from a toy manufacturing point of view to use any of those designs. When I said when I said there are too many Rangers, that was when we were talking about adapting Q Ranger for a full new season, which we could have done. But it's really about when you've got that number, I think it's 12 or 13 Ranger characters to support with story and script, it ends up being very once over lightly, and you can't tell stories about the characters in nearly as much depth as you can when there are fewer of them. Now, if you look at Cosmic Fury, we don't have that problem because a lot of the characters are already well established. And apart from Fern, who you could argue isn't particularly well served, and that's simply due to only 10 episodes and time. We don't have to do the character building quite the same way. But I was not interested in doing a full season, 44 episodes with 13 Rangers. I just think it would have been unwieldy, and I don't think we'd been able to do any of them justice. So that was the reason. When I said there were too many Rangers, and I was asked that question a long time ago, I was talking about its adaptability as a full season, and it was the same time that I said that we'd be unlikely to do a season with cops and robbers because of Black Lives Matter and not having Rangers as criminals. It was that same conversation, which was years ago now, but people keep bringing it up again. I think technically we could have adapted those suits for our 7 Cosmic Fury Rangers in Cosmic Fury. The colors would have had to have changed, which would have been a bit weird. But in the same way that we adapted the Zords, and they would still have been piloting Zords that didn't match their colors, because some of the footage that we used, there were a lot more Zords than we had Rangers. And also, we had to work with the colors that were in the footage rather than the colors of the Rangers we had necessarily. So there are those kinds of complications. But the main reason is there was no interest in, from a toy point of view, in those suits.
Okay, that makes sense.
Where did the inspiration for the name Cosmic Fury come from?
Oh God,
that was a Hasbro name. We always called it Dino Fury 3 in house, because in our heads it was it was a continuation. It was a season 3 of what we'd already established with Dino Fury, and it feels like that. It was always going to feel like that. But Netflix didn't want it to be a season 3. They wanted it to be a season 1 of something new. That's in terms of marketing and attracting new viewers or people who may not have seen Dino Fury. So the name had to change. And Hasbro brand came up with Cosmic Fury. And I think if you're going to change the name, Cosmic Fury after Dino Fury is fine. It says that it's in space, and it also says that there's some continuity from the previous season.
Were there any other working titles?
Cosmic just needs royalties. That's all he needs.
Sorry, I missed that.
I said, were there any other working titles?
We had lists. We come up with 20 titles of 20 names for each character, or 20 suggestions for characters. We brainstorm, and they all get sent to Hasbro. And sometimes they pick one of ours, and sometimes they come in with one of their own, because they used to have their own in-house writer who was really good at coming up with names. But the people connected to Power Rangers within Hasbro, there are not many people left.
Yeah,
I mean, they're still around, but they're not working for Hasbro anymore.
What about other Rangers? Was it always just Heckle, Billy, and Mick, or did y'all ever plan to get any other Rangers back? Was there any other Rangers that signed on that couldn't commit, or was there anything of the sort?
No, the people who were in the show were the people we always planned to be in the show. Ninja was the only character that changed during development. And we weren't entirely sure for some of the development whether David Yost would join us or not. There were a lot of conversations around that, so we were always prepared for that not happening. And it was great that he did come and play. It was wonderful to have him for the whole season. But the negotiations over that and Once and Always with all the cast went on for a very long time, and there was lots of toing and froing.
Because a lot of people wanted to see men again, and I know there's that Zord scene with it's like loopy. I assume that that's men in the background.
It is.
With the Megazord, but yeah, you know, her being like the newest Ranger on the block and stuff. Like I know that fans were hoping that she was gonna make a surprise cameo, so I guess they were
Yeah.
kind of justified.
I thought she was fantastic. And remember that we wrote Cosmic Fury before we wrote Once and Always. And also we were instructed for there to be no continuity between Once and Always and Cosmic Fury and Dino Fury. They wanted it to be completely standalone. We snuck in, obviously, a bit of continuity with Billy, but we had to keep it very, very low key because he was the only character that traveled from Once and Always into Cosmic. You know, there were conversations about what a new season might be, and it could well have been a continuation of Once and Always. It was perfectly set up for a new season that might have involved Min and possibly JJ, you know, and other team characters and some of the MMPR Rangers, but sadly it was not to be.
Now, I just fell to my knees again.
Were there any plans to like bring back the other like MMPR Rangers too, or was it always just going to be Billy?
It was always just going to be Billy. We wanted Billy on board partly because he hadn't been on the show since he'd retired from it, but also because we were sympathetic towards the way he'd been treated originally on Power Rangers, and we wanted to prove that things had improved and treat him really well and give him a very positive connection with the show to try and mend some of the bad blood that existed there. And also, you know, he's a really cool character, and we knew that in a 30th anniversary season that the fans would love to see him back. It was a bit upstaged by Once and Always because obviously he ended up being in that first. But at the time we were writing Cosmic Fury, Once and Always wasn't a thing. So we thought it was going to be a complete coup to have him in the series. So no, there was no intention to bring other MMPR Rangers in. Again, cost and complication, and only having 10 episodes, it feels that we barely had enough screen time to tell the story we wanted to tell in 10 episodes. To try and cram in more characters, they would feel ill-served, and people would probably be more frustrated than happy to see them.
I absolutely love the kind of like the LGBTI representation, Simon. And actually it's funny because I was talking in another circle, Twitter chat about how like there's like a nice bookend moment between like the 90s and the kind of homophobic 90s, and now you're bringing in you know, these beautiful sort of lesbian couple in this new series, which I really love. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing that you're doing this, and this is amazing. I wanted to ask you, like, in terms of creating that representation and that you know, authenticity, is what was the process like of bringing like Glad on to kind of help kind of create this authenticity? Because I know that was really important.
Well, we had one of the writers on the team was a lesbian writer who was very much a defender of Izzy and the Izzy Fern story, and so we wrote each stage of the writing process. Like we start with a concept, which is like a 2-page document with a story for each episode that gets enlarged to be an outline, which is like a treatment, which has a lot more detail scene by scene. And then you get a first draft script, second draft script, third draft script for each episode. Each of those stages, the content was sent to the person at Glad we were working with at the time, who would read and give feedback. We actually got very little feedback other than "this is great, keep doing what you're doing." But having that consultation meant that we felt safe in the authenticity of doing what we were doing, and yeah, so that's how that worked. On the disability story in Cosmic Fury with Harvey, we got a lot more script notes, script feedback, and it really meant that we were walking on eggshells a bit in terms of how we depicted the situation, because we weren't able to do anything negative. So we couldn't have people being very shocked or upset that he'd lost his arm. That's why there isn't a scene with Harvey and his parents, other than I'll explain everything later, I'm fine moment, because any person in their right mind would be really upset to find that their child had lost a limb. And we couldn't show people being upset because the message that we needed to send, or we had to send, was an overwhelmingly positive one about, yes, you will learn to live with a disability and life won't be the same, but it can be good. And that was the message we were trying to tell with the story. So I've got off the subject of LGBTQI representation, but it is a similar situation. The GLAD involvement was minimal, but we did run everything involving Izzy and Fern past them. I mean, one of my regrets with Power Rangers finishing, or me finishing with Power Rangers, is that there are a lot of things that I would have loved to have done with the show that we never got the chance to do. I would love to have had a regular full-time gay male character. I'd love to have had a gay male relationship on the show. I'd have loved to have had a non-binary character. I'd love to have had a plus-size character.
Yes, the fluffies. I am here for
I'd love to have had a character with autism. There are so many. In terms of representation, there are so many people who have never had a front and center representation on Power Rangers. And given that the message of the show has always been anyone can be a ranger, I think it could have been explored in even more depth. I think Izzy and Fern was a tentative first step for something that could have become even more beautiful.
I love that. And I do actually really appreciate that from a disabled perspective. I actually watched the show last night, and when that did come up, I was very surprised, but I was kind of like, how you would have juggled the kind of target market with the kind of, that responsibility of showing kind of grief and loss. And there are so many really interesting kind of thematic and kind of social ideas that you kind of push into Cosmic Fury that I was like, how in God's name did you push all this? It's so interesting.
Great to hear. Well, this is what Becca and Alwyn and I are really interested in is trying to present for kids who are our main audience all the details and riches and differences that exist in the real world that make people, and just to normalize it, particularly within the context of a superhero show where our main characters are doing extraordinary things all the time. I think it's really important. So to have had the opportunity to do that over Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury is great, although I do feel we were only just getting started in some respects.
Was that weight felt during filming, like having two openly queer characters along with two openly queer actors in Heckle and like Billy's actors? Did that ever?
No. I mean, the filming was light and full of joy and fun. I don't think there was any stress or tension about that at all. I mean, New Zealand is a very liberal country, and people who work in the film industry are very liberal people generally. So it just wasn't an issue. I mean,
maybe weight was the wrong word. I meant impact. Was that impact felt? Like,
I think the impact was one of appreciation, like from the actors involved. They felt very happy to be telling these stories and knew that it would mean a lot to LGBTQI audiences, particularly young kids who were watching this, who might feel marginalized or outsiders. It was a way of saying you're not, you're included, and you're important, and you too can be a superhero in your own lives. And I think that's a very important. It's a message of empowerment, which a show like Power Rangers can really communicate.
Yeah, thank you, because it is felt from the fan base, from queer fans like myself. Like,
yeah,
the whole Izzy and Fern situation is incredible, and it is felt. I just want you to know that.
Thank you. No, it's great to hear.
Izzy gang.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you came on here. You pretty much shed light on the creative side that you had and the things that you want to introduce, because you did introduce a lot of thematic themes but it only scratched the surface. And I do know that's no fault to you guys on that side. It has to do with all the corporate, I'm going to say espionage at this point from Hasbro, with the limitations of the stories that you can tell and the depth that you can go into. But we appreciate you even going there, even trying to introduce these things, even though you were shot down on about 100% of them. The fact that we now know and have insight that these things was there, we appreciate you more.
Thank you. I mean, something else I'd say about Power Rangers in my time on the show is that when the stories and characters are written, they're not assigned particular ethnicities. The ethnic makeup of the cast comes from the casting process. So actors are put together who will complement each other. But at the time of initial writing, they're all quite neutral in terms of their backgrounds. And I think, in future, it would be great to have more representation in the writing team of the different backgrounds of the characters who are being written for. And that's another area that I think could have been improved on with Power Rangers. I mean, with Cosmic Fury, because the budget hadn't been increased, our writing team was tiny. It was basically 3 people. Right. And but I think it's essential today, if you're writing African-American characters or Chinese characters, to have access to lived experience on the writing side of things so that you can be authentic. And I think historically, with Power Rangers, that element has been brought by the actors who are playing those characters, and it's not necessarily in the writing.
Yeah, I was about to mention that, all of the LGBT representation is obviously appreciated, but from a standpoint of like Zato or Ion, they're like, their actors are black, sure, but like obviously character-wise, they're two aliens with antennas that they can hide in their foreheads, right? And it's like, on some level, like Ion was a big thing for like myself and other black fans, because it's like he's the first, black Gold Ranger. He's the first black Sixth Ranger. So it was a big moment, for a lot of us, and a lot, myself and others feel like he felt kind of squandered, and he kind of exemplified various stereotypes and things that we kind of don't want to see from our characters, like and of course, like you said, having a writing room of only like 3 people, or not having like people of color who can actually write to these characters, it can become problematic, even if the people working on it don't have those intentions. But yeah, like that was one thing that stood out to me. But I really wasn't a fan of Ion in Dino Fury, but his whole thing in Cosmic Fury I really liked. He's coming from the original. He's coming from the original team of Rangers, right? And the other 4 have been killed off already. Zato's died. Now Zato's dead. Now Zato's back, and he has to struggle with the possibility of him dying again. Then he does die again. So it's like seeing that level of maturity from Ion after he came off as such a goofy and unserious character in Dino Fury, I really appreciate it.
Great, I agree. I agree with everything you've said, basically. And it's a way the show, if it does carry on, should grow, I think. Just backing up to what I said previously, I got no pushback from Hasbro at all on the Izzy Fern relationship story. They were 100% supportive. So I don't want anyone to think that Hasbro were at all negative or putting up obstacles or obstructions. I think Hasbro likes to see itself as being a very inclusive company, and so it should. And it was cherished and celebrated, that story, not just within the writers' room and the production, but within Hasbro as well. And I think they were very proud of the GLAAD award that the show got as a result of that. So, and when I say there are things that I would like to do if I'd had the chance in the future. I'm sure I would have been allowed to do some of them, but again, Izzy and Fern were just a toe in the water, or the door opened a little bit, and I think that I actually suspect with Jonathan Entwistle, looking at the content of his other shows, I think there'll be a whole lot of stuff in those shows that's new to Power Rangers along the lines of representation. So fingers crossed.
I
Sorry, I got unserious question, right? So, why has more Rangers died than like main villains? Like it's kind of like I just mentioned it and it just like came back to me, but like pretty much the whole original Dino Fury team is dead. Zato died twice, but like Void Knight redeemed, Void Queen redeemed, Slider and Mucus redeemed, Scrozzle's still alive, Zed is still alive, but living in his own personal hell. So it's like, I don't know, that's just crazy to me. Like, you have more, and then the 40 scientists who were killed to free Zed from the crystal. And I actually went back and counted yesterday the amount, the Rangers, the villains who were killed in Dino Charge. Like, it's kind of crazy just thinking like, man, like technically, even though it hasn't been seen, more Rangers have lost their lives than like these threats to Earth and the whole universe.
Yeah, really does keep getting away.
It's a very good question, and I think the answer is stakes. You know, if you know that your monsters can kill Rangers, and if you know that Rangers are vulnerable, and yet they still put their all into fighting evil, then it makes the stakes that much higher. The other reason I think that some of the iconic monsters keep going and going and going is that once they're dead, they're dead. Whereas you can always get a new Ranger team next season, but no one would really want to permanently, finally, and forever kill off Zed or Rita, although they were purged and cured, etc. But there's no interest in Rita and Zed, who are now good and happily dancing in their living room somewhere in suburbia. We want the flayed alive and chrome accessory version who can cause lots of damage if they're going to be a villain. So it really boils down to storytelling and stakes. I guess Scrozzle could have been destroyed, but he's very useful as a sidekick villain. And writers get fond of particular characters too, like Mick. Writers are fond of Mick, the writers are fond of Scrozzle, and so they tend to keep popping up here, there, and everywhere. But because, you know, traditionally every season there's a new team of Rangers, historically, it feels like they're more expendable in a way than the big supervillains. Shouldn't be the case. But the fact that, I mean, in Once and Always, the fact that Trini died in the opening scene, I think made Robo Rita seem extremely dangerous and up the stakes for all the characters in that show.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Anyone else?
I was going to ask you, Simon. Sorry. Sorry. In the second episode of Dino Fury, when you see the former team die, was there any discussion about revealing their identities or bringing them in to kind of help, just in case, or was that all kind of taken up by the Morphin Masters?
It was all taken up by the Morphin Masters. It was backstory to Zato and later Zato and Ion. It was to really establish how lethal the Sporix were and the potential damage they could do, but also how Zato's team of Power Rangers had formed. Because they were dead, that it wasn't worth investing time in developing those characters beyond their Ranger persona. Because they were 65 million years ago that they lived, and there was no interaction with the characters whose stories we were following in the present day. I guess that's the reason for it, although obviously for the characters, Zato and Ion, they were very real. And we did establish that they were haunted by dreams and memories of losing their teammates in a later episode. But really, it boils down to the question of whose stories are you telling? and you can only tell so many character stories in a 22-minute episode, particularly as we had with Dino Fury, where each 22 minutes is taken up with a Megazord fight and 2 ground fights, plus a morph. There's not a lot of time left for, plus the obligatory comedy scenes. You've only really got 4 or 5 minutes left for character scenes or character story. So the traditional Saban dictated mandates or parameters for a Power Ranger episode that the beginning of Dino Fury definitely inherited, though the second season of Dino Fury moved away from that, really restricted the amount of character development you could do.
So what about Zato? Okay, the Zenith Ranger, just to go back to this really quick. The color. So, all right, in Dino Fury, it was mentioned that Morphin Masters had been killed. And it was the assumption that it was, black, gold, and pink, because we didn't see them when red and blue finally showed up because green just couldn't sit down somewhere. But then right at the opening of Cosmic Fury, we see all 6 Morphin Masters, they get captured. So it's implied that there were other Morphin Masters of other colors. And then Zato, when he finally becomes Zenith Ranger, he becomes a color that we've never seen before. So is there like a line of thinking there? Like, is he this color, what Russell, the Champagne Ranger? Is he this color like purposefully to set the stage for this new line of Ranger colors, or was it just something y'all did?
Yeah, we wanted him to be a new color that we didn't, as far as we knew, didn't exist within the existing Morphin Master colors. But to go back to where you started with that. It was an assumption that those particular Morphin Masters had been killed. That wasn't the intention when they were talking about retreating into the grid to stay away from human affairs. We'd imagined that there were a whole lot more Morphin Masters than the original 6 or 7 that we'd seen, and that they had fallen in those battles. But the reason there were only 3 that appeared later in Dino Fury was because we only had 2 suits, and it became very time-consuming and difficult to film any scene with more than 2 Morphin Masters because it involved costume changes and huge amounts of green screen, and it was just really slow and challenging. Like, I think the Morphin Master trial scene in season 2 of Dino Fury, where Green was kind of put on trial in the Ranger base, they went over by about 3 days shooting that footage. So it's a logistical, practical thing why we don't see all the suits, but we knew we had to have them all appear at the end of Cosmic Fury, so that we got a sense that Zato was joining them. And I hoped that we'd be able to make more suits so that we didn't have to do it all through visual effects, but we couldn't afford to make the suits. So we had to just bite the bullet and spend the many days it required to shoot those scenes with all the layers of green screen involved. But in terms of why Zato was champagne or beige, we wanted him to be white originally, but as I mentioned before, he wasn't allowed to be white. So we then went for titanium, which was an existing kind of metallic Ranger color. That was what we pitched. But again, Hasbro didn't want titanium. So we came up with this kind of metallic-y champagne color that they were happy with. And Hasbro came up with the title Zenith or Zenith, meaning the apex, the most important, the most powerful. So again, it was a process of collaboration and dismissing things that didn't work or that Hasbro weren't happy with. And also, it didn't have anything to do with really who was or wasn't left in terms of the Morphin Masters, but we did want it to be a Morphin Master color that we hadn't seen before. so that when he joined them, he looked like he was an addition rather than a repetition, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, it does.
Because now we got a future where we could see some Champagne Rangers running around.
Yes, sir. I'm with it.
Exactly.
I'm down for that.
Yes, sir. Champagne Poppy.
Well, at
Simon,
least we
more
know he's the
questions
sixth
from
ranger in the
Leanne Hannah.
master.
Yeah. So I've got two questions that have been asked, like been sent to me. I thought I'd jump in now and then let everyone carry on after. Was there anything that you were asked to take back, to send back when because of Rear Soldier was still filming or content was made? Like, did they ask for anything back? And the second question is, was there anything that you wanted to do that you really wanted planned but couldn't do it at the end of the day?
Okay, yes, we did have to send things back to Toei because they were being used in films that, like one-off films that were being made, not the actual season. I think those involved the Tarek Void Knight masks and weapon, because they were being reused. I think it was actually for a show in Japan. They wanted them back. So we juggled our scheduling and our writing around when Toei needed those items. And I think we sent them back to Japan, and then they sent them back to us when they finished with them. So that was the way it worked. The second question, in terms of were there things I wanted to do that I wasn't able to, I've already talked about the different types of rangers I would like to see in the show. And I had come up with a concept for a season 31 that involved a lot of that, but that was not to be, sadly. But in terms of stories, no. In terms of production and the way in which we do things, yes, but that really is all about budget. I mean, there were a lot of innovations in Cosmic Fury. Like, we used the whole screen technology to show alien planets outside the windows, or so that we could shoot through the cockpit. I mean, that wasn't green screen. That was actually playing for real when we were filming those scenes. We just had these massive LCD screens, and what was on them had been designed in visual effects before we started shooting. So that was a different way of working. And there's more that can be done with virtual cinema. That was just us experimenting. But again, it's expensive. So there would have to be a commitment to invest more. I think the visual effects, as I've said, could be better. I think that, I don't think the suits were perfect in terms of their finishing. I think it should have been clearer that what got called Halloween muscle padding was actually armor rather than an intent to show the Rangers' muscles. There are all kinds of things that, given another chance, I would do better. And, if I was given another season, there are all kinds of things that I would like to build on, both in terms of story and in terms of production value.
Oh, that's cool. No, it was one of the questions that one of my friends sent me. And I think he's quite curious because he joined in a little bit later, so he didn't hear beforehand. But I've been asked one more question, and someone just asked, could you ask Simon who was behind the change to the squid symbol on Evil Ollie's belt? I did 2 different versions and have always been curious.
It was designed by our art department, that logo. I think, Tracy Collins' team designed it because it was the logo that was behind Squid Ink Inc. and all of Bajilia's forces had that logo somewhere on them. So that was where it came from. Ollie was working for that side, the evil side, and it didn't feel right for him to have Zs on his costume because he wasn't really, I guess he was kind of enslaved to Lord Zed, but he was his own thing as well. And we just thought it looked evil, particularly in black, that kind of squiddy icon. A lot of this is about subjective choice, There's only so much intellectualizing you can do. You play around, like on designing a logo. I'll go into the art department office and they'll have pages and pages of rough sketches, and you go, oh, that one's good, or a bit of this, and maybe we elongate the head here, and it all gets put together until there's something that everyone's happy with. It's a really fun part of the creative process of a show like Power Rangers, where you're inventing so many things from scratch.
Cool. Yeah. My friends also messaged me and just said, thank you for making a banger of a season. So,
thank you.
And then let everyone else ask questions now.
Yeah, I just have
hey,
one. Sorry, go ahead, Lewis.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I couldn't even think of anything myself because I kind of jumped in pretty late as well. So I don't know what was really talked about yet. I haven't really heard anything until Legion was talking about Ion and his improvement in the show. But I mean, I'll keep thinking of something, honestly. But I just want to put my voice in there real quick.
I'm gonna have to go. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go and have some lunch soon. So you've got 10 more minutes.
Hey, can anyone hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I want to pop in. It was great. I loved it. And thanks for finally making a lot of my 7-year-old dreams come true. There's just it was so cool. Over the course of those 3 seasons, I got to see a girl reject the fact that you have to wear a skirt to be a Power Ranger, which was amazing. I got to see a high school aged girl in a relationship with another girl and balancing sports and life and everything else. And it took 27 years, but like I finally feel like I saw myself, my actual self, in a Ranger. And I just kind of want to say thanks for that. And then, I mean, getting a female Red Ranger, something I never thought I would get to see a woman actually be the person leading the team. Man, it made all my dreams come true. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, there's been a lot of kind of vitriol flying around the last few months, but I really have, since I've been in this job, listened to what you, the adult fan, are saying about the show. And, the points that I've agreed with, Beck and Alwyn and I have worked really hard to try and integrate. I think if you look at Cosmic Fury, you'll see that it's a completely different show to, say, Ninja Steel or Beast Morphers, and how it works in so many different ways. And that's been a big part of what my goal with the show is, to actually move it as strongly as possible towards something that I like and something that I think that the fans of the show will like, while still working for the core audience of kids, which ironically I know nothing about because they don't post on Twitter or Ranger boards, and there is no research that I have access to about what works or what doesn't work with 7 or 8 year olds who are the people that we're supposedly making the show for. The only evidence I've got is anecdotal from parents of kids who tell me, oh, my 7-year-old's loving it, or my 8-year-old's watching it for the 7th time, that kind of feedback. So it's been great to actually have the interaction with the fans that I've had, but now I'm no longer involved with the show. I will stay around, I think, for another week or so while Cosmic Fury is still being talked about. But then I think I will permanently leave Twitter because it's got increasingly toxic over the years, and it's not good for my blood pressure. And I don't need to keep the discourse going because I'm not working on the show anymore, and it takes a lot of time and energy. And part of it's my own ego wanting to get feedback, but I've never actually intended to upset or inflame or enrage fans of the show. I've always tried to be as upfront and honest as I can be. I've never deliberately misled people. I mean, I've made a few sarky remarks, but it's always been in response to people who've been incredibly rude, and I think I've managed to remain reasonably polite throughout the torrents of abuse that I've been enjoying over recent months. Anyway, rant over. Next question, please.
I mean, I personally really don't have a question, more of just of honestly just appreciation. At least for me, for Ion. Not to really go back to it, but to go back to it. I essentially appreciate everything about Ion. As a fan of both PR and Sentai for a long time, I've always been a fan of Six Rangers. So to finally have a Six Ranger that looks like me and my future kids, man, that's crazy. And then just his overall personality and everything is great. But then the whole thing just went beyond in Cosmic Fury because of his arc and how unique his perspective is with the whole thing dealing with Zeto's power. I've been highlighting it for this morning, man. It's great. So I do want to give you your props, you and honestly Jordan, and pretty much anybody who worked in making that character, man. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for that comment. I love Ion too, and I think that he was much more three-dimensional character in Cosmic Fury because he had a very serious story to play. I mean, the grief for the loss of his friend is extreme, and you don't often see that in a kids show either. But I think he's a great character, and Jordan was just a joy to work with. He was so playful and committed, and yeah, a great actor, really good.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's beautiful, man. Yeah, just again, thank you again, man. And honestly, thank you for being here, man. We do appreciate you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you being in this space, especially like there's somebody like me who like I personally I wasn't a fan of Dino Fury, and I had a lot of reservations going into Cosmic Fury. You know, there was you know, I really wasn't looking forward to it that much, you know, coming off the last two seasons. But it turned out to be like really good to me. Like I enjoyed it. Like, you know, I got to see it before it came out and I watched it 3 times, you know, and I watched it this 4th time this morning, you know, so I think that it was a really good season. And yeah, I appreciate you coming in here, answering all my questions and, you know, just answering everybody's questions and easing a lot of fans' minds. I think, you know, you were very articulate in all of your answers and you gave very professional and genuine answers to everything, which I think is going to put a lasting impression, you know, especially after like everything that is went on throughout the year, all of the discourse, all of the back and forth. I think, you know, after people who can go back and listen to this space or everybody who's in this space, I think, you know, with Cosmic Fury being the last season and just having this conversation, we can end things on a high and positive note. So yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate you coming in here and talking to us.
Thank you very much. I should never have said I wasn't a fan. That came back and bit me. But
listen, honestly, people are going to get upset either way. That's how a lot of people get.
The thing is, I don't watch much television at all, especially not kids content. Now my own kids are grown up.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of fair.
But as I said, I love making it, and I love trying to improve it. And because I grew up on a diet of Star Trek and UFO and Thunderbirds and Space 1999 and all those kinds of kids sci-fi shows in the 70s and 1970s and early 80s, to be actually playing in this particular sandpit has been an absolute delight and a joy, even though I wouldn't necessarily ever watch the show I'm making. You know, I've already seen it 100 times by the time it's finished. So I will give the reboot a go though, just out of sheer curiosity as to what they've done with it when that comes out.
We appreciate you and your transparency.
I want to ask you, Simon, what you have learned now about Power Rangers ending with Cosmic Fury, you know, kind of 2 questions here. First one is like, what would you say to Simon then coming into Ninja Steel that you now know? And also the second part of that question is, what would you tell anyone who wants to actually produce kids TV now that you've done it for quite a while?
I think I'd tell young and innocent me, not at all burnt or cynical or wrecked, coming into Ninja Steel, keep doing what you're doing. never ever look at Ranger Board. And
that's very.
They're actually here.
And don't go on Twitter because it will eat you up. Just make the show. That's all you need to do. So that's the advice I would give to my younger self. In terms of advice to anyone else making kids TV, that's a too broad a question really to be able to answer. I think if you're good at what you do, you have to follow your instincts, think about what you're doing, understand the audience, and try and surprise them and engage them and delight them through the stories that you're telling. But a lot of that's about craft, and if the person I'm talking to is good at what they're doing, they'll do that anyway. I certainly don't consider myself an expert in kids TV. I'm a generalist. I've made all kinds of content over the years, and kids TV has just been a part of it. So be true to yourself, follow your instincts, have fun, and be bold are the kinds of things I would say to anyone wanting to be a producer in any kind of TV.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I was just about to say that I actually went to film school and I really wanted to work on Power Rangers. Well, that's probably not going to happen now. Good old $50,000 debt.
I was hoping to be in front of the camera for the show, honestly. So we're kind of in the same boat on that.
Simon, I got to ask you, are you going to come to PMC this year?
If someone invites me and I can afford the tickets, then that would be great.
Can't come to something that ain't happening this year.
It is happening next year.
You said this year.
Same thing.
Next year. Anywho, we thank you, Simon, for joining here. We appreciate your time, your transparency, because we don't get that a lot from EPs of any brand out there. So we do appreciate you. We really hope you don't disappear for Twitter, even though it is a toxic place. You kind of mute certain things. So we hope you stick around. We could possibly talk again in the future, especially when this reboot happens. But we know you got to eat, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon.
I'm going to stay on Threads, so if you want to find me, that's where I'll be. Hey, I've got to go now, but thank you everyone for listening and for the great questions and for sticking with Power Rangers and enjoying whatever you did enjoy about Cosmic Fury. And be assured, it came from a good place and was made with heart and care and love. And obviously not everything will land in the way you hope it will, but the fact that you are here and talking about it means that there's a certain amount of engagement and care, and that's so important. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. May the power protect you, man.
Thank you
so much. Coolio.
Thank you so much, man.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye, Simon. Thank you.